r/AskReddit. What is the most chaotic good thing you've done? Accidentally dropping customer belongings, so I'm required to replace them at no cost. Normally, you break a thing, you go to the technicians and pay a fee to replace/repair it. If an employee dropped a customer's stuff, the customer can turn and say, hey, this only started because/you/brand Naman had dropped it. So the rule was to just replace it with what we can. If it's an older model and not around anymore, they get a new one. I only ever did it twice. One was a younger girl that spent her saved birthday and holiday money on an, unbeknownst to her, imitation MP3 player, so we weren't supposed to replace it. But how do you tell an 8-year-old that she wasted all her money from years? Tough lesson. Poor me got butterfingers, I guess, since I dropped it. Other lady was very pregnant, busted phone, and her mother in the hospital that she had on her computer on Skype almost the whole time as it wasn't looking so good. Phone was out of warranty, not easy to use. She clearly had a lot going on and oh no. Dumb me, dropping things all over. Now we have to replace it, but on our dime instead. Shucks. Hope you moved your pictures to the drive or something. You know how Mr. Incredible did his job at Insureka? I did pretty much that, but for a telco with predatory contracts and unscrupulous salespeople. I had to explain to customers needing help that they were fucked unless they told the next agent this and that, when the official procedure was just to say tough luck, thanks for the money. I mention it here because we dealt with a lot of faulty handsets, and getting the claims to fall under warranty wasn't easy. Most people would be surprised what they don't cover. I'd almost forgotten about this. Way back in Diablo 2's heyday, people got their accounts stolen by scammers all the time. I got mine stolen because I was 14 and stupid. After a while of sulking I moved on, but a few days after it happened a friend of a friend showed me how to recover it. Apparently there was a difference in the synchronization between regions for account credentials. The US was up to date on a patch while EU wasn't. This means that if someone took your account and changed the password, it was lost on US, but on EU it was still in the database with the old password. Funny quirk was that if you logged into EU with the old password, it reverted the US login credentials to the old one as well. Once I was wise to how it worked, I opened a small business as a stolen account hunter. I'd post in chat that I can help those who'd been hit. All I needed was the password of their account before it was taken and changed on US. I'd take them to a private channel, explain the process, and go about it. If they trusted me, I'd rejoin the channel with the old account and ask them if it was it. If it was, then I'd collect a fee by taking an item of my choosing and trading it to my account for compensation. They'd get their account back. I got an item I might have been looking for, and everyone was happy except the scammer who I stole from. Rob from the evil, give to the good for a smaller fee. I'm not entirely sure if this called chaotic good or not, but I'm sure someone will appreciate the story. I was working in a restaurant that required all servers, food runners, and bus boys to wear Vans. It was a hip urban scratch kitchen, so everyone wore skinny jeans, Vans, and all the dudes had beards. For the servers, it wasn't a huge deal. But bus boys and food runners, me, spent a great deal of our time in the kitchen. Vans plus kitchen floor does not mix well. People were constantly slipping. I got fed up. So I just started wearing non-slip kitchen shoes without asking. Someone in management eventually noticed and told me I could wear Vans or get fired. So I brought up OSHA requirements. Since I was OSHA certified from my previous job, I was well versed in kitchen safety requirements. I didn't threaten to call OSHA, I just mentioned that OSHA safety compliance requires all staff whose primary work positions are located in a kitchen to wear non-slip shoes. It didn't work. I wanted to keep my job, so I didn't threaten to report them. What I did instead was a little malicious compliance. The next day I came in with Vans. Now, one thing I was known for was my ability to carry an inhuman amount of plates. I could stack them up and down both arms and balance them. Never dropped a single one. It actually earned me direct tips, which food runners never got. So I loaded up my arms and intentionally slipped, losing well over $100 worth of food to the floor. And I immediately pretended like my back was in serious pain, even though I barely felt it through the fat. My manager immediately went into crisis prevention mode and brought me into the office, obviously trying to avoid the list of lawsuits I could bring down on him for OSHA violations and workplace injury due to gross negligence. Instead, I offered him a simple solution: let us wear non-slip shoes and I won't file for workman's comp, report them to OSHA, or sue for forcing me to wear improper footwear at the threat of losing my job. He happily agreed, not realizing all of this was a setup on my end. All he saw was the money and possibly job he was about to lose. He thought he came out on top while giving me and everyone else exactly what we wanted. All I had to do was take one for the team and pretend to get hurt. From that day forward, all primary kitchen staff were made to wear non-slip shoes. Nobody else slipped once in my time there, and our financial loss to floor food was cut down significantly. I had a job during high school, but didn't have any real bills to pay, so I gave away a lot of my money. But for some reason I was embarrassed about it. I guess I didn't want anyone to think I was giving money to get attention or recognition. So I would slip money into donation jars, only if no one was looking. One time my classroom was doing a fundraising collection for an earthquake or something like that, and I felt really strongly that I wanted to help. So when I had a minute loan, I slipped what was left of my paycheck into the jar. It was around $80. My teacher came into the room, saw the money, and got kinda weird about it. Who did this? Who put this money in here? Nobody answered. I wanted to die inside. He kept pushing. He started asking individual students. Was it you? Did you see who it was? Everyone kept saying no, we don't know who did it. Before he got to me, another teacher interrupted. I think that whoever put the money in there probably didn't want anyone to know it was them, and you should stop. Thank you, other teacher. What the hell was the teacher gonna do? Give the money back? Weirdo. I did something like this once, sort of. In middle school they were having a fundraiser for a teacher's mom who was diagnosed with breast cancer. It happened to coincide with Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So we all kind of made a big effort to help one person instead of giving to charities. Only, the teacher didn't like the idea of kids donating and not getting things in return. So we did things like fashion shows, and we bought treats, and just anything we could do to get and give money. Of course, from middle schoolers in the middle of the '08 recession, in a poor small town, it's not much. So, one day I've got $100 from an insurance settlement that I had been intending to donate secretly, only I couldn't because my family wanted tickets to the event that you got from donating. You donated $1 and got one ticket, just to give an idea of how this worked. So, I walked up to the teacher after school. She's rushing out when I ask if she has a second to take a donation. She's a super sweet lady and stops everything to talk to me. I pulled the $100 from my pocket and hand it to her, and she's wide-eyed in shock, asking if I'm really sure, if my parents know. I told her it was my money, my parents knew, and of course I was sure. She just cried, and she hugged me, and I let her have her breakdown for the next 10 minutes. After that, I realized I technically just bought 100 tickets to this event, when I only needed 6. So I asked her if she could give the extra tickets to the kids who couldn't donate, but wanted to go. It's been years since I talked to her, but the last I heard her mom was in remission, and also she was nice enough to not bring up my donation to anyone else after I asked her not to. I didn't want any type of credit or recognition for it. I just wanted to help. Helped a homeless guy steal from a takeaway. About 5 years ago, it was the kind of independently owned place that does pizza, fried chicken and kebabs, and I had quite a bit to drink. He tried to buy food. The clerk told him to get out. He had the money for this meal. I then said I'd buy him the food and to go sit down and wait. The clerk went over and told him to get lost. He got a little upset saying I just want to eat something. I have money, but the probably 19-year-old clerk wouldn't have it. He got a bit upset and walked outside. I see him go and he sit in a bench just outside and put his head in his hands like he was about to weep. When THW Clark came back to serve me, I ordered both our food, and she said I'm not going to give you what he wanted, because then he will always come in here begging for handouts. I said to her I'm a paying customer and I want to buy these 2 meals. She then said I will only sell you 1 meal. My response, having not paid for anything yet, was, okay then, well now this is happening. I turned to the next counter and picked up the tray of food that was just about to be handed over to a customer and saying to her make sure they give you another meal, knowing full well they would have to as she hasn't even sat down with it. I then walked straight out the front door up to the homeless gent and handed him the meal. The look of shock on his face as the clerk came outside. I just stepped in front of her and kept repeating you have no right to touch me, while my new friend steadily paced away with a tray of hot food. More of the staff came out to intervene, and they said the police had been called as I had committed theft. I ran away in my stupor and have not entered the shop since. I hesitate to even mention this, but there was an autistic kid that was being bullied by this hockey player when I was in high school. The autistic kid didn't even realize he was being bullied, I don't think, but I saw this go on day in and day out for about a week. I reported it, but the teacher didn't do anything. The vice principal said he talked to the bully, and he did. The bullying continued. It may have been simple things, like messing with his stuff, or making rude comments. But then when this bully tripped the autistic kid and he fell down the stairs, I'd had enough. I helped the autistic kid up and then went on my way. This was a big flight of stairs. They were metal and concrete, and they were in the corners of the building and were the only way to get up and down my high school. The next day, the bully was getting ready to walk down the same flight of stairs. I stuck my leg out in front of his and pushed him forward, throwing him down the stairs. The bully didn't like this. He got up and ran up the stairs. Before he reached the top, I pushed him back down the stairs and this time he hit his head. So, the bully comes up a third time and tries to fight. By this time his friends have gathered round. Hockey players. I punched him very hard in the liver. He fell back down the stairs. The vice principal interviewed everyone who was rumored to have been present. About 10 people saw me do this. The bully's friends told the VP what I'd done. I don't know what the others said. The next day, the VP calls me into his office, asks what happened. I'm a terrible liar, so I just said that the bully mysteriously fell down the stairs 3 times in a row and seemed to hurt his right side very badly, but I didn't know any more details. An implausible story. The vice principal told me that he had some eyewitness testimony, but the details varied about how it was that the bully fell down the stairs. For example, he wasn't sure if I threw the bully down the stairs, or if I simply tripped the bully and made him fall, or in what order those things may have happened. So he said, Mr. Theory of Doom, the fact that I'm unable to reach a conclusion this time doesn't mean that I would be unable to reach a conclusion the next time. So don't let there be a next time, unless the little fucker deserves it. There wasn't a next time, but only because the bully left the autistic kid alone. I'd have probably done worse the second time. I was a probation agent in another career. In my state we are full police with full powers of arrest. Working probation was honestly a great job. I love being able to help these people. Not all of them are bad people. A few are bad, and a few are really good. So I do an home visit. Girl is not doing well. Hasn't showered. She doesn't have soap. Her clothes are ragged, skinny. Nothing in the house. It's all just weird. I ask my questions and poke around a little. Boyfriend follows us from room to room. I want to ask her some questions, but she's being very guarded. She clearly doesn't want to say much in front of the guy. I notice a candle, and a light goes off in my head. I say, what the fuck? What's with the candle? Are you doing drugs? People cook their heroin needles with fucking drugs, like what with the spoons? Alright, that's it. I've seen enough. Tomorrow, My office 10:30. Be there or you're going to fucking jail. Then I wink at her. She goes, oh my god, Agent Citadel, I'm not on drugs, I'll be there, oh my god, I'll be there. She's legitimately terrified at this point. I'm good at this. She shows up. Let's call her Emily. Emily, get back here and sit in this goddamn chair, and sure as you move an eyelash you're going to goddamn jail. She sits in my chair and I sit at the computer and look at her. Okay, Emily, we have about 5 minutes before I start yelling at you again. And he gets suspicious. What's going on and how can I help you? Turns out the guy was financially abusing her. He wouldn't buy her soap or food or clothes. All the money she got from her work he kept. These two weren't married, so I asked her if he had any priors. Turns out he did. Felonies. Bingo. This was how I was gonna help her. I sit there and I say, sit tight. I'm not really yelling at you. I am, but not really. So I walk into the hallway and slam some doors. Are you out of your goddamn mind? No, I don't give a shit if you're gonna be fucking homeless. State law says you can't live with a felon. You can sleep in the gazebo out back for all I care. No one under my supervision is living with a goddamn felon. I kick him out of the office and send him home. You don't need to be here. This is a police station. Go home, shitbird. You're a felon trying to live with someone on probation. That's a crime. The state doesn't care. I could arrest both of you. If I catch you living together you're going to prison for felonious cohabitation 2nd degree. Then I sit back down and she's bawling her eyes out. Okay sweetie, it's done. No big deal. Now where do you want to live? She leapt out of that chair and hugged me like she was a little kid. I remember her body was racked with sobbing. I also remember she smelled like stale tobacco and beau. I, being a very married police officer, freaked out with this woman straddling me and hugging me. She sobbed how no one had helped her in years. I got her into her mother's house that day. Her mother hadn't talked to her in a while and a police officer advocating for her daughter got her back in the house. Technically, I couldn't have arrested him for what they were doing. But my goal was to get her out of that house. That's what she wanted, and that's what she needed. I also had to do it in a way so that the shitbird guy wouldn't try and bring her back. Didn't need him whispering sweet honey into her ear either. My ultimate justification when it came up was it was my opinion that her living in that house was a poor situation. Her living in that house was not conducive to lessening her criminogenic needs. She was also living with a felon to whom she was not married. It was only a matter of time before she reoffended. The people in my office were all like, what the hell is Citadel doing? I really like helping people. She ended up completing probation successfully and she's still doing very well. She thanks me profusely every time I see her. Several years ago, I went to an infamous conservative Christian college that, since attending, I've realized I do not agree with in almost any stretch of the imagination. At this time, I was very close friends with two closeted gay guys who also attended the school. I and several other friends knew that they were in a relationship, however they had to maintain the appearance of being straight or face expulsion from the school. It was almost impossible for them to do anything together. Dates were essentially off the menu. They had no time or privacy to be intimate, as doors in the dorms did not lock, and the most privacy you ever had on campus was either going to the bathroom or putting a blanket to cover your area of a bunk bed. Well, I thought that was bullshit. Me, my now ex-girlfriend, and our two friends were all musically inclined, either in the choir or playing instruments. So my ex and I created a quartet performing group that we pretended was official and very private when we practiced. After all, we didn't want anyone hearing our songs before we performed. We fronted as a men's trio with my ex playing violin. We would meet in the music practice rooms in the basement of the dorms 3 times a week to practice for our performances. In actuality, my ex and I would stand outside of one of the doors playing violin/singing songs from our actual rehearsals, while our two friends had an hour or two alone in the room itself. If anyone happened to come down there, which wasn't usual, since there were more popular / better practice rooms in the music building, we would pretend to be taking a break / getting air, then go back into the room and start practicing an actual song with our friends. If anyone asked us to perform, we would say we weren't ready, or we would perform a handful of songs that we actually had prepared. Anyways, yay. Created a fake music group to help my gay friends have some privacy. Not really sure this counts, but it's all I can think of, and I think I was just doing my job. I'm a medic, and one night we get called for an ill child. Get there and we find a little boy about 4 or 5. His mom called us because he fell and hurt his arm. Okay, that's a normal call. Start to examine the kid and he just latched onto me. Most kids want nothing to do with us. That was the first red flag. Looking at the arm I can see that it's broken, but there is a lot of bruising too. A bruise doesn't form that fast, and I'm thinking he's been abused. Dad comes in and is pissed we're there. Says to leave, and he doesn't want us there. Super aggressive and just making it worse for himself. I completely play dumb and just explain that kids hurt themselves all the time, but if he doesn't go to the hospital we have to call the cops for the report, and we don't want them to assume that a kid that hurt themselves while playing is something that needs a police report, as it could cause problems. Dad says fine, but he's going with us. We tell him that's fine, get dressed and ready, and we will leave as soon as he is ready. He buys it and goes to change. We were out that door faster than I've ever moved. In the truck, I tell my partner just go as fast as he safely can and get us out of there. Our usual ride to the hospital is about 30 to 45 minutes. It took us about 15. We call in report, tell them we need security at the ambulance bay. We got into the and gave report to the doctor. We sit the kid on the stretcher and he freaks out that I'm going to leave. I told the doctor I'll stay as long as I need. Called our dispatch and said we were on administration until further notice. Let my boss know we will be delayed at the hospital. Stayed with the kid a long time. Did a full exam with the doctor and a nurse. I'll spare the details, but this kid had been viciously abused for a long time. Dad was arrested in the waiting room for trying to force his way back. The abuse charges ended up in court. His attorney tried to say that me nor the doctor actually examined the kid, and that our reports were falsified. Because of the type of patient and the situation, we had pictures showing the abuse. You could clearly see me hands, uniform, and id badge in the pictures, as well as the doctor. His defense pretty much gave up after our testimony. More or less kidnapped, with the best intentions. This 18-ish-year-old runaway street kid who got mixed up in inner city gang stuff was robbed of all the drugs he was selling, on the wrong block without permission, and dosed with all the LSD he had on him, before they beat him to a brain aneurysm hospital, got him stable, and dumped him back on the street, where they found him, but like his brain was fried, they emptied the whole vial of LSD into him. So he was gonna be blasted off for a month straight, which is basically a death sentence. You gotta babysit people like that until it wears off. They can't even eat or drink. Found him on the street with a crusty 2-day-old burrito smashed in one hand that I guess someone had given him, but couldn't communicate how to eat to him. Watched him piss his pants. He couldn't talk or understand anything. He was a zombie. I'd like to think we got his consent, took him to a quiet park, and spent about 2 hours trying to communicate him about what was happening, and that we wanted to take him up to a mountain camp, to come down away from the city / that gang that was probably gonna come around and finish him up. He didn't have an ID on him or anything. What else could we do? His only friend we found was relapsing on heroin and begged us to help him get him out of town. We got a thumbs up from him, which was a miracle, and took that as consent enough. Lol, it was wild, like having an oversized baby. Show him yourself drinking water and pass it off and hope the monkey see monkey do part of the brain works. After a week he would tell a really wild trippy joke as soon as he woke up, but right after he'd go mute and confused again till the next morning he started calming down and It's weird because on drugs people are so innocent, but once the come down surfaces and time has passed, and you're suddenly in an unknown place you get super paranoid freakouts. It was inevitable. The more coherent he got, the more his shitty personality enhanced with paranoid came through. He got in a big fight with some PPL who had been helping take care of him for weeks, and ended up getting slapped by a girl. He ran off into the woods at night and I couldn't find my headlamp fast enough to follow him. I was so pissed. I searched for him for ages and it really bothered me. I felt extremely responsible for him since we intercepted his little timeline and brought him out there. Everybody else left the area, but I stuck around BC. Either I was gonna find word about him or find his body. It was pretty remote area. Turns out that night he crossed the river and found some Bougie campers who took him back to the city the next day, and he's doing fine. I always wonder what he remembers about me, if he remembers me at all. Be trippy to talk to him about it, since I've literally never talked to the kid sober. In high school I was in the weight room after class was done for the day doing my normal off-season workouts for football with my other teammates. Had one guy on the team, who we'll call the Russian, who wasn't that great, but would try his hardest, even though he wasn't always picking up what was being coached. He also lived a block away from school and would go home on his lunch hour. We had open campus to sometimes get drunk. This specific day he showed up to the after school workouts wasted, like stumbling a bit, bloodshot eyes, could very easily smell it on his breath from drinking a full glass of vodka. Wasted. I don't know how the coaches didn't notice, or maybe they chose to look the other way. Doesn't matter now, I guess. We all were doing our workouts, and he was kind of doing one along with us, but was also just kind of doing his own thing. In the weight room, we had a calf raise machine. This specific machine was designed so that you would put the weights on bars on both sides of it, like you would a bench or squat bar, and then the weight would rest on your shoulders with pads to help for comfort. What you're supposed to do is get situated underneath and press up into it a little bit, so when you flip the weight lock you're ready for the weight. He got underneath it, put his hands on the grips, flipped the weight lock. There was easily over 100 pounds still on the machine, but probably much more, and because he was drunk, he crumpled like a piece of paper under the weight of the machine, slamming to the ground. This obviously made a big noise, and so I ran over to get the weight off of him and help get him up. After helping him up, I could see that he was only going to hurt himself or someone else if he kept trying to use the machines. So a couple minutes later, I walked over to him, and knowing this would freak him out, I said kind of low, to not draw any more attention to him, "Hey, the coach knows you're drunk, and he's calling the cops. You better get out of here now, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble." I got a thanks for the heads up, and he immediately bolted out of the door away from the coaches and went home. It was a balmy Australian afternoon in a semi-rural science classroom. The students, sitting diligently, except for Douchy McDouchy, revising for tomorrow's mid-semester exam. The teacher, getting his money's worth on the chalkboard, feverishly writing review work/equations. Eventually, having tired of milder worksheets, I decided to simply scrunch them up and throw them in the bin. Now, I was at the back of the class, so I knew that if I was to make the distance, I needed to get some compaction going and work on my speed, and it would probably be best if I just hit the wall and bounced off into the bin. Now we travel back a few months before to tell you a little more about Douchy. Douchy was the kind of guy who you just knew. His dad was a gorilla and his mother, some form of canine animal, possibly, previously thought extinct. His idea of making fun was to spit on random furniture or throwing a metal hammer into a fan to see what would happen. He wasn't a bully per se because he never directly hurt anyone, unless you called him on his bullshit and or dobbed him in. Enough people had dobbed him in though, and now fading back into the classroom, we learned Douchy was on his ultimate warning. One more act of considerable insubordination, and he was to be permanently expelled. I cleared my mind for the backquote throw of the century. Taking a deep breath and holding it, I pulled back my arm cannon and threw it as hard as I could for the wall. It was at this moment that time stood still and even reversed a few seconds. It was as if the universe had prepared me for this moment with Spider-Man-like instinct. I had completely forgotten that my hand-eye coordination would be comparable to a baby girl needing a nap, and the moment the paper missile left my hand, I had instantly calculated the point of impact. But I had also noticed that if I simply took those fleeting milliseconds to turn my head down to the table, like everyone else, expect of course again, Douchie McDouchie, I could buy time to think things over. The teacher exploded the instant the package was delivered and turned around to see a laughing and pointing Douchie McDouchie. To his credit, Douchie quickly realized what this scene looked like to the teacher and very quickly dropped his tone to one of imploration. "I swear sir," he begged, almost crying, "it really wasn't me." "Office," the teacher screamed, pointing to the door now. The rest is history that unfortunately no one, that I know at least, knows. He went to the office, presumably home, and then was never seen again. Some say he is being a douche in another school, in another state. Others say he was thrown into a fan by his dad as an April Fool's joke. I think his parents returned him back into the wilderness of the Aussie bushland. It's best that way. But it is what it is. I like to think I did the world a favor that day, utilizing my very mild, chaotic good superpowers for a greater purpose. Saving the world, one douche at a time. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.